What's up, guys? This is Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with the overall market as we just got a very important speech from Donald Trump, not to mention a lot of political uncertainty involving these tariffs, which is simultaneously affecting the Fed's policies. I'm also going to break down what's happening with many of these charts. Just know that I'm not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $2,000, you're guaranteed 30 in total, and the offer ends very soon at the end of March. So as far as the market's going, as you can tell, we got this very, very big sell-off that was going on because of Donald Trump's tariffs and because of lots of uncertainty involving politics. This caused a lot of downside, at least for the week. However, there is one thing that's optimistic, and that's the fact that we did see SPY close above our 200 EMA. So that's a good sign. However, there's nothing guaranteed yet until we see the reaction if we could continue to hold above this. Now, this may signify that there might be some temporary relief coming first before we see a further decline. And if we lose this key support, then yes, we will be looking for that dump. But I just want to say that there's a very, very good chance the market sees a temporary rebound before further declines. And if we lose that 200 EMA, we're going to turn even more bearish. I'll talk all about the charts in just a couple of minutes. But we have to discuss some things involving Donald Trump and Jerome Powell, as both of them spoke for the day. As a reminder, we had Donald Trump impose 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico and 10% tariffs on Canadian energy over the last couple of days. However, one thing that's important about this is the fact that he's now starting to cause exemptions because he wants to see Mexico and Canada comply with many regulations. So, for example, imports from Mexico that comply with the 2020 USMCA trade pact are going to be excluded from the 25% tariffs for a month. That news came out just about 2 days ago. And then there was also more news about how Mexico are basically in a position where the tariffs are going to be delayed as well for them if they make a lot of agreements with Trump. So that's been a little bit more optimistic. But despite that, the market is still quite uncertain, still continuing to fall. So that is still affecting the way things are moving. So what's causing uncertainty is the fact that Donald Trump is saying a lot of different things. He mentioned he wants to increase sanctions on Russia. There's other things going on involving that. And then I think we had another thing from Donald Trump where he's saying that he basically said that if tariffs or if negotiations don't go in the US's favor, he could increase tariffs above 25% on a lot of different products between Mexico and Canada. So he's saying there's the possibility of even more tariffs coming. This is not necessarily that transitory for the time. There's actually a lot to come for a while. So you want to make that very, very clear. And then we had a lot of quotes from Donald Trump today. So I want to read some of his quotes and I'll talk about what Jerome Powell said because Donald Trump's quotes will affect us. So I have my phone over here. I'm going to read these quotes. Donald Trump is saying that he wants to shrink the U.S. government and grow the private sector. He said, and I quote, "I want auto parts to be built and made in the USA. Canada has extremely high tariffs on lumber." And he said that we may do that today or on Monday or Tuesday when it comes to forming a deal with Canada. He also mentioned that the EU is a terrible abuser on tariffs and that India has agreed to cut tariffs way down. We'll have more manufacturing jobs instead of government jobs in the USA. That's what Donald Trump said. He also said that there's not been a disturbance so far, despite it being possible, and that he's expecting good CEO data and reports very, very soon for future earnings. He mentioned that there will be modifications, but very little. Most of the tariffs are going to be in place, and there are also going to be some changes. He also said that he's going to increase jobs and went on about that. And he went on about the same things over and over again. So that's what I heard from Donald Trump, at least so far today. I read lots of his quotes. Why is this so important? Well, Donald Trump's been saying that, once again, he is alleviating some of these tariffs, negotiating with these countries. But then simultaneously, if things don't go in the US's favor, he mentioned that he wants to increase tariffs again on Canada and Mexico. So it's all about negotiations in his view. And the reason I bring this up is because of Jerome Powell. Jerome Powell mentioned that he's going to be keeping interest rates on hold amidst the rise of economic uncertainty, and that the tariffs, economic outlook, and factors like that may affect the Fed's decisions. Whether they cut more or less, that could be impacted by what happens with Trump's policies. So Donald Trump is actually affecting the Fed now with these tariffs. The way in which that affects inflation is going to be very important. We'll have to be watching for that. And that's going to be very important, especially with CPI coming out next week. Now, I have more quotes from Jerome Powell that are very important. I want to read them to you guys. Jerome Powell said that he's anticipating a route to 2% inflation very, very soon. He thinks that it may take many years to get there, but they're on the right path. He also said that the Fed is in no rush and that they could wait for greater clarity. He said most long term inflationary expectations remain stable, but many indicators are showing that the job market is still quite solid. So he remained very optimistic about that. That's part of why the market tried to rebound. But then he went on about how inflation and things like that are causing uncertainty about their policies. So the Fed is not in a preset course. They're going to maintain policy if necessary. And once again, they're going to be watching to see what happens with the labor market. So he went on about that. Um, and on top of that, I think he's just saying the same things. He was saying that there's still a lot of uncertainty about what's happening with the tariffs and for how long they're going to be in place. And he said that it is not appropriate for them to react to one-time price hikes and that the Fed is going to wait and see. So he's basically saying the Fed's going to wait and see what happens with Donald Trump's tariffs. There's still a lot of uncertainty and they're going to just hold until then. Besides that, I didn't see anything else that was too crazy. He essentially said the same things, but that's what Jerome Powell basically said. So he's very optimistic about the labor market. He's saying that they're on track for hitting that 2% goal of inflation over the next couple of years. However, there is some, there have been some increases in inflation. He did kind of like address that. And now he's saying that with Donald Trump's tariffs coming out, the Fed is very uncertain about that and they have to just wait and see. He mentioned they're in no rush to cut or to do anything else like that. So that they're going to be very, very patient with this because it affects people's lives. And that's essentially what the guy said in a nutshell. So that's what we're seeing, at least so far. I hope that's as clear as possible. That's what we're looking at least moving forward. When it comes to other pieces of news that are affecting the markets, keep in mind that for next week, we're also going to be looking at some consumer inflationary expectations on Monday. Then we also have on Tuesday the JOLTS job openings and job quits reports. That could be very important as well. And then after that, we have on Wednesday our CPI report. That's going to be very important. So watch for CPI. Thursdays when we have PPI data, and then Friday we have Michigan consumer sentiment data. So I would argue that Wednesday and Thursday are very important for the markets because of CPI. And then when it comes to our earnings, keep in mind that we just have Oracle, lots of these retail stocks as well, such as like Kohl's and Dick's Sporting Goods, all announcing earnings. Then we have Adobe and a few more like that also announcing earnings, so just keep that in mind. The last thing I want to mention is that right now, the market is still in extreme fear. Typically, when that happens, you're going to be looking for some kind of rebound, but there's no sign on the chart yet that we're truly breaking past resistance. We're holding support, but there's no break of resistance yet. So we're no longer showing true signs that the market's bouncing really hard. The VIX is still at extreme fear. There's still lots of fear in the markets. So what do I see from this point on? I'm going to keep the analysis kind of simple in today's video. I'll go into more details tomorrow. Just know that as far as SPY is going, okay, what's good is the fact that we have this critical support right over here, very close to this 568 area. I did mention that to you guys yesterday, and we did not lose 568. We actually dipped below it, and then we saw buyers defend. The catalyst that helped the buyers defend was Jerome Powell's speech, as he remained optimistic, and he helped keep the market cool-headed. So he brought back a little bit more, I would say, confidence, that helped the buyers return. However, SPY is not broken past 580 yet. I want to see it do that for this thing to try to bounce. And I also don't think we're done with the sell-off, because if we lose the 560 area, we're going to easily dump to 550 all the way down to this low. And not just 550, we actually have stronger support around 540. So there's a higher probability we dump to 540 if we end up losing that 560 area. So what do I think is going to happen? What is my view of this market? Let's break this down. I wouldn't be surprised if we get a temporary relief move next week, just temporarily. We could try to retest like this trend line right here as resistance. And then whether or not we break 580 depends. We need to get above 585 for this thing to bounce harder. If we can't get back above 585, it's just going to be another dead cat bounce, followed by even more downside as the month continues. And then we could be looking for a move all the way down to much lower levels, right? There is going to be a risk of a move like this if we can't break past these resistances. So watch for a move like this. There might be a temporary rebound coming because of the fact that we held our 200 EMA, but then we could see a big rejection as well, close to 580 to continue to dump if we don't really get the move we're looking for. So keep that in mind. There's still a risk of this. If we hold above 580 and we can manage to see a lot of buyers defend it there, then yes, we have the potential to go up closer to 590. For now, we're making lower highs and lower lows, so this is the most likely move unless we get a hold above that 580 area next week. Then we're going to be looking for an attempt to get back up towards this imbalance fill and very close to where our 20 EMA is going to be. very close to 590. So I'll be watching that very, very closely. That's what I'm eyeing for now on SPY. Temporary relief. If we can't break 580, I'm looking for a big rejection for a bigger move down. Okay. On the QQQ, what's not so good is the fact that we're barely holding our 200 EMA. It's just barely holding that. However, if we end up losing that $480 area, I wouldn't be surprised if this thing starts dumping all the way down to, a lot of these gap fill areas and lots of liquidity zones in like the 470s. However, because we're above our 200 EMA, if we can maintain above 490, I will be expecting some small relief move close to 500 or so. We need to hold above 500. If we can't do that, then expect this to start dumping back down towards the 470s. Okay. But if we hold above 500, excuse me, we could be looking for a bigger move towards like the 510 area where the 20 happens to be. So that's our 20 EMA, the next resistance. So I'll be watching to see how well we hold above that 500 area before we get another rejection move like this. I'm trying to make this as simple as possible, so hopefully you guys could see how this is going to likely move. So look for a rebound attempt for 500. If we get a big rejection, we're going to make new lows. If we break it, we could be going a little bit higher temporarily before potentially getting a rejection. I'm not too happy about our Russell 2000 chart because we're well below our key trend lines, right? We're actually below this trend line so far. We could attempt to get back to it, but then we'll be watching to see if we get a rejection or not. So it's not looking that great. Keep that in mind, please. ES, it's on a downtrend. It needs to reclaim 58.25 for that rebound. I do think it's going to test that next week. So this red line should get retested. If we reclaim it, then we're looking for a bigger move to the 5900s, and we'll see if we reject or not. If we don't, we're looking for a rejection. So either we reject off the low 5800s where the red line is, and then we start dumping lower, or we try to break past it temporarily. We make a temporary move higher, close to 5,900, and then we end up dropping, right? So that's what I'm basically anticipating, right? We're going to be testing 58.25, and we could reject off that and then start dumping lower. If we could hold above it next week, we'll be watching to see this. There could be a bigger move up before this thing starts dipping again. So keep that in mind. That's the direction so far. On NQ, there is some good news. We held above 20,000 for close because we held this blue trend line right here. This is our, whoops, let me go back. That's our very, very important support. Why is that support? Because that's previous resistance becoming support right over here, a classic setup. So we're holding that, which is quite good. If this holds, we could be trying to revisit this imbalance up here. So what would typically happen is you try to go higher for this imbalance towards 20,600, then watch and see if we get a rejection off that or not to make a new low. Or if we break past that, we could go higher for like 21,000. So I think we test 20,600, 21,000 next week, and then we'll see if we reject to continue to dip. I'll be watching that very closely just to see how well we hold above resistance. But for now, we remain bearish. Bitcoin's trying to hold support. We got to hold around this 85,000 area, or else this could be dumping even more. Keep that in mind. For Nvda, we're looking decent. We're trying to hold up on the 4-hour. This might attempt to fill this gap. We could see a temporary relief move thanks to Jerome Powell's speech. We could be looking for like 115 to 117. Then we'll see if we reject to make a new low. If we don't, if we break past that, we're looking for like 120 or so. So I'll be watching that to see if we make a higher low. That's going to be key for us. Tesla, it actually filled the gap. That's a good sign. So far, we filled the gap and then we bounced. So we had this gap over here on the daily all the way down to the low 250s. That's a good sign that we might try to retest this trend line before this continues to dip even lower. It is still bearish overall, but we might see some temporary relief like this to retest like 275 or so before it continues to dump. If we break that, could go a little bit higher first before we get another rejection. So I'm looking for a move like this. On Apple, it's bullish. So far, it's holding this trend line. When you go to our 4-hour time frame, once again, the 4-hour is looking a little bit weaker, but I just want to say that Apple's trying to push higher. This is showing some strength compared to the markets. There's a good chance it dips like this and it tries to reclaim this trend line on the 4-hour. If we reclaim that, we could be looking for like 245 to fill our gap. And then if it does rally like that, it might come back down later on. So this could just be a very temporary move. But I do think that Apple has a little bit more upside potential next week. It's holding up a little bit better. Netflix is quite weak. It came all the way down to our targets. I mentioned I'm expecting 870 if we lost 900. We actually hit 860. So now it could be trying to get back up to 900. And we'll see if we reject or not off that back test. So it's going to be a very, very big level. I think we retest 900 next week. We'll watch if it rejects there or not. So keep that in mind. For Coin is consolidating right now. We want to see this break past 225 for a big rebound. It's just completely stuck, so we have to give this some time, kind of following Bitcoin. I see a risk of it retesting 208 and then it might just consolidate for now. Amazon, it dumped really hard. I think we filled this gap over here. I was watching this gap fill. I think I have to go to the daily time frame to show you this. The daily actually shows we almost filled this gap. I don't think we fully filled the gap yet. Doesn't matter. We got a nice bounce over here. So, we saw buyers trying to defend it. What typically happens is we return to our 20 EMA. So I do expect a test of 204. Every time we're hitting the 20 EMA, we reject, reject, reject. So in this case, it might try to push up here, hit that, then reject again. So watch and see how it reacts. Might see a temporary push to the 20 EMA, the green line here before it rejects. So keep that in mind. For Meta, same thing. We have this very, very key level near the 630 area. If it breaks down, I'm looking for 639 again. But just like Amazon, we're hitting our EMAs and rejecting. So we might return to some EMAs before it rejects again. On Microsoft, it's the same thing. We might return to our EMA and reject. Google may do the same thing. We might return to about 176.93. If that breaks, could get closer to like 180. Then we'll see if you reject again. So give it some time. The VIX is also rejecting here. If we lose 23.03, we're looking for this dip to fill this gap. I suspect it might come down to fill the gap. It depends if it could hold our 20 EMA or not. And then, if anything, there's still downside potential. I think there might be a temporary move up. If the VIX loses 23.03, then we could be filling that gap. But ultimately, the charts are still bearish at the time I'm recording this, unless we break very, very good resistance. If we break that, then yes, the market could try a bounce, but I just don't think we're ready yet. We have to wait for confirmation. We don't have that yet on the charts. So the rebound, is going to be very temporary, at least as of right now. That's what the chart suggests, and there could be further downside coming. If we break resistance, then maybe the rebound could be bigger. We have to wait and see just to be safe. And then even if we get a bigger rebound, I still don't think it's going to last. There's going to be a risk of even more downside. So anyways, that's what's happening so far. Look at this as an opportunity. Look at this as a blessing and not a curse. And I thank you all so much for listening. Please have a good rest of your day and peace out.